Hey guys, Timoshan here. As you probably know, Blizzard launched the cinematic trailer for their new expansion, which is called Dragonflight. I watched it this afternoon, watched the deep dive, took some notes. I thought I'd give my thoughts on it today, what I thought about it. In particular, we'll go over some of the profession stuff towards the end. Just kind of what I thought about that, what it could lead to in the future, what it might mean. Obviously, this is a lot of speculation. We don't actually have a lot of information, but some of it's pretty cool. So I thought we'd go to the website and kind of go through each thing that was talked about today. And of course, if you want to check out the full trailer, go to Warcraft's website, worldwarcraft.com. They have it available there for you. All right, so first off, I would say the cinematic itself. I actually thought it was pretty cool. It's a lot of high fantasy stuff. Obviously, it's called Dragonflight. There were a lot of dragons in it. I thought it was a little slow at the beginning, but I mean, it was fine, right? So my preferred fantasy is grimdark stuff, personally. Obviously, World of Warcraft is not going to be grimdark. But for what it was, I thought it was fine. You know, there's nothing wrong with the cinematic. So I was checking out some Reddit post things earlier. There was people complaining about like there's no clear big bad in this one. There's no jailer or Sylvanas or anything like that. An obvious big bad guy, and I think that's fine. I imagine they'll probably include something along those lines in the future. And obviously, we're gonna fight somebody somewhere. So I imagine we'll find out at a later date. All right. So this is their website that they put together and launched when they put out the trailer. And obviously, you got the cinematic here. Talks a little bit about the story. We're going to the Dragon Isles. Going to help the Dragonflights out. They're coming back. So I would watch the cinematic to get some of the background on the stories. To be honest, the story's fine. With the way the lore's gone lately, it's not important to me, really, any longer. I used to really like the lore of Warcraft, and I really think they've done a disservice to it overall. But in the end, I play the game for the gameplay. So the lore can be what it is. I just hope the gameplay is good. They talked a little bit about, you can see the Waking Shores. It's one of the new zones. On Iran Thanes. I thought the zones looked really good. You could see they talked specifically this Waking Shores one, I think it was. I could be wrong. It was one of them that they took a lot of inspiration from like Grizzly Hills, and I like that. I really like this a lot better than the Shadowlands stuff. So my favorite zones are like the Northrend zones. I really like the BFA zones, and kind of the supernatural stuff like with the Shadowlands. Just some of it's cool looking, but just overall the aesthetics didn't really appeal to me. So I like going back to, we're gonna be on plains, we're gonna be in forest, just trees. Maybe there's some ruins around, but less supernatural stuff. I say it says there's dragons flying around, but the zones themselves, I think, they look a lot, I think, like those northern zones, and I think that's excellent. I'm glad about that. So that's pretty cool. Let's see what they got next here. Okay, this was of course a big one, the Drakthir Invoker. So there's a new race. I'll be honest, I think the race is kind of ugly. So I'm not thrilled with it. Maybe they'll iterate it a bit on before the expansion actually comes out. I'm not too worried about it, honestly. I'm not one of those people that care too much about the race. I think most of my characters tend to be blood elves. I have an alt that's a goblin because I wanted to have the ghost wolf ability to make it faster to go from the mailbox to the auctioneer. So and I don't know why it's made him a goblin. So who knows, right? For me, it's not a big deal. For a lot of people, it will be. In general, I think it's kind of ugly. The class, though, the Invoker, I think it looked really cool. So some of the demonstrations they had about their spells and skills, it looked really neat. Now, you can only be the Invoker if you're a Drakthir. I think that's kind of an interesting direction. I think there's going to be a lot of, I don't want to say backlash, but a lot of people who are going to question that, like, wow, they're really locking your class into that race. I'm actually fine with it, though. I think they're kind of taking a chance with that, but I like it when they're kind of branching out and trying something kind of new and a little bit radical. We'll see how it works out. What do we got next? Dragon riding. So I've always been saying, like, the main thing with this new expansion is I wanted to be able to fly from the beginning. I think walking around makes everything worse about the game. Whether it's the world class, trying to kill rares, doing the quest, anything, it's just all made worse by walking and it taking forever to go from place to place. And then it's actually made even worse by knowing that flying is coming up eventually and you're still having to walk and you're having to wait. I think that's terrible. I just think it's not fun. And I think Blizzard kind of went away over the last couple years from just asking that core question when they're implementing things like, well, is this going to be fun to do? Walking around Zerath Mortis was not fun. It just wasn't. It's just so much better flying around. So I'm glad there's going to be something. Now, this isn't exactly flying because it's a whole system they're doing, customizable dragon. It all seems really cool, I think. My impression after reading this was that it's going to be a system where maybe you're not just going to jump on and be able to go from place to place, but once you get maybe to a certain area, you'll be able to maybe then summon your dragon and fly to another area. I think it's going to be a big increase in movement, though, so you're not walking everywhere you go for the first 2 months or whatever of the expansion. I think that's a huge improvement. I'm totally fine with them implementing a system around it. As long as it's not just like, okay, wait, and then have to do this achievement. And oh, by the way, if you want to do it on another account, you got to do it again. It's just all terrible. So I'm glad they're not doing that. I'm glad they're doing this. And I'm hopeful that it's going to work out well. Another thing they went in, which is really cool. If you get a chance, watch the deep dive. I think they did a pretty good job. They went in a lot of detail on some things. They're totally changing the UI around. I know there's some mixed feelings on this, on how the health bars look and things like that. I think they look fine, but I think the most important aspect is that they're going to let you customize it, clearly. It's not just that it looks different. So they had a couple screenshots where the action bars could be moved. So like it was an add-on. So it was like, okay, as long as all that stuff can be moved and customized in a really intuitive way, sure, yeah, why not? I have no problems with that. So if you don't want to have an add-on to do those things, you don't have to. Just do it through the WoW UI. I think that's great. And if it looks nicer, cool. Fine with that. This was obviously a big one you can see here. Talent updates. They're totally revamping. They're going back to talent trees, but not exactly like it was, like you might remember. They had a really good section on this about why they were talking about going this way. I'm not so sure about their explanation. They were talking about they want to sorry about that, my cat walked on my keyboard. So they were talking about they want to kind of focus on being able to be like a hybrid and things like that. I think that's fine. The truth is, though, I think this will probably be like everything else, talent-wise and skill-wise in the game. Not me, somebody's going to figure out the best. I'm going to go to Wowhead or Ice Veins or wherever, and it's going to tell me, here is the best tree for your character. And it's totally cool if somebody doesn't want to do that, but the truth is most of us do that. That is how we roll. So, well, I like the idea, and I'm glad they're doing this. I think it is a cool thing to have the talent trees, especially the two separate ones. If you can see it here on the screen, there's the Druid. So this is for all Druids, from my understanding at least. And then the resto spec has another tree. So it would be the same for the other Druid specs, Pharaoh and so on. So I think it's going to be really cool, really interesting. We'll see how it goes. The other thing they talked about is Ian kept talking about loadouts, and that's fine. What I took from it, the way I understand it'll work is when you're in a city or town, you can change your loadouts. There's no requirements or anything. You just do whatever you want. You can change the skill tree here. Then you can save it as like a loadout. So here's loadout 1 for PvP. And then you can change another loadout and save that as my Mythic Plus loadout. So on and so forth. And he says you can change it anytime. There's no gold cost or anything like that happening. And then when you're out of a city, my understanding is you can't go in and change. Like if you open up your PvP loadout, you can't start moving those talents around, but you can change loadouts at will. So if you are PvPing and it's like, oh, okay, raid's about to start, you don't need to go back to town, start making changes or anything. You just get summoned to the raid, change to your raid loadout. So I think that's fine. I like to be able to do anything I want whenever I want. So My preferred system would be to be able to save those loadouts, but then change them if I felt like it, wherever I'm at. If I'm in a raid and I'm on boss 1 and we kill that boss, and there's a, I don't want to change the entire loadout, but maybe I need to switch one talent. I want to be able to just do that whenever I want to. I don't think it's going to be, quite there, but the way you described it seemed fine to me for what it was. So I'm looking forward to seeing more about it, learning more about it. All right, so professions. So if you're checking out my channel, you're probably leaning towards wanting to learn more about professions. And there was a bit there. I was actually surprised at how much. It's one of the biggest sections they wrote about here, actually. So I'm actually just going to read some of this and what they talked about. So they're introducing something called crafting orders, where you can request for another player to craft something for you, even if you don't have the skill or have the right profession to do it yourself. You'll be able to browse any of the recipes. You can pick the one you want. And it says you can include some or all of the reagents needed for the recipe, including ones only you can get your hands on. I think that's going to be important. So you can either find someone in person who can craft it for you, or, and this is pretty cool, there's going to be an NPC which you can use. It'll have an auction house-like interface where you can then place your crafting order. So including what reagents you might have, any other items you have, if you're going to offer a tip. They talked about that in the presentation. It says you can specify if the order is open to anybody in the public, or if it's for a specific person or just your guild. So if there's someone in your guild who's doing the crafting, you say, okay, your guild, here's the reagents, here's the 100 gold, and your guildie crafts it. Or you can do it just for anybody. So some of the other things worth noting is that the item you have crafted can also be soulbound, which is a difference from before. Obviously, if I craft a soulbound item, I can't give it to you. So this is going to be different with the crafting orders. You can have somebody craft a soulbound item for you. So that's pretty cool. There's some additional updates of note as well. The biggest is the introduction of quality of both your crafted items, and this is interesting, gathered reagents. So my first thought with quality was like, it sounds like ranks to me, like 1, 2, 3, 4, quality 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it started saying, well, this is going to be for gathering as well. So I guess the higher quality gathered items you use in a recipe will produce a better weapon. And it talks about higher item level or a potion that might do more healing if it's with higher quality items, things like that. Crafting UI also introduces stats specifically to your professions for both crafting and gathering. The biggest source of your ability to craft items at higher quality is through specializations. While there have been specializations in the past, in Dragonflight, you'll be able to go out and earn points in multiple ways. Maybe an old book on a bookshelf in a ruin somewhere. You can meet up with a hermit in a cave to teach you more about your profession. And in the end, you can choose. For example, it gives blacksmith. You can be an armor smith, and you'll be able to put points into that skill to become better at crafting all armor. Okay, awesome. That sounds cool. We'll see how that works out. And then the other thing that I found interesting was they said they'll be adding crafting tables for all professions. Now, I don't know if this is going to mean that you can't craft if you're away from the crafting table. Is it going to give you bonuses? Is it going to give you higher quality items if you're at a table versus being away from it? I guess it's not a big deal. I know when I craft stuff, 99% of the time I'm standing in the auction house. So I'm assuming this will probably be close to the auction house, which is also a big change. Just throwing this out there. They mentioned that the player hub is going to have an auction house. So obviously, like right now, Orbos doesn't have an auction house. You got to go back to your capital cities or somewhere with an auction house to do your posting and scanning and all that stuff. And you won't have to. It'll be, which I think is a great change. I think that's just going to, more people are in Orgrimmar right now than there are in Orbos. So I think that'll be cool to keep people at the player hub. Even as the expansion goes on, new patches come out, things like that. So that's pretty cool. And says, by specializing in honing your craft, you can build your own clientele, build your reputation for high quality items. How far you take it is up to you. So I wrote a couple notes about what I thought just about the profession presentation and everything in general. really, it is really just speculation, right? Because it says a lot, but it also leaves a lot out about exactly how it's going to work. So a lot of people were taken when they saw the crafting orders or kind of the work orders as perhaps more like a buy and sell orders. So if you've ever played EVE Online or anything like that, you'll be familiar with those. Um, I don't think so. So from what I've read, it's not like that because it's talking about setting up a crafting order and you can specify the amount of your reagents. So I mean, my impression from that is if I need an item crafted, then I go here and I say, okay, well, if the item needs 100 ore and I only have 70, then I say, okay, well, I have 70 ore. Will you craft this item? I'll give you the 70 ore and 1,000 gold. Now it's going to open up all sorts of, I think, interesting business opportunities. I don't know if they'll be good. We'll see. For someone who can craft, they'll have to decide, okay, well, what's a reasonable quote unquote tip for one of these crafting orders? If someone offers 70 of their reagents, so is 1,000 gold enough to make up for the cost of the 30 I have to supply and craft this? If they only offer 50, will it? So I can imagine spreadsheets being made showing here this amount for this item. If somebody offers X amount, I need to charge this amount. Here's what their cost for me to buy the materials. This talking about quality of materials, that's going to make a difference. So I think could be interesting, but I don't think it's buy and sell orders. I don't think we're going to be putting sell orders and buy orders up in the auction house. There's also a lot of concern on the WoW economy Reddit. There were some people saying it looks like, okay, this is going to destroy scanning and posting items, kind of like we do things now. I also don't think that's the case because the truth is, right, if I am coming with you and I have 70 materials, I still had to get those materials some way. I either had to buy them myself, which if I'm going to spend money on 70 of them, why didn't I just buy all of them? Why didn't I just buy the created item outright? So it's going to depend on the system some, but I don't think it would destroy the posting and scanning because you'd also have to think about if I had the 70 reagents, well then if I didn't buy them, I had to go out and spend my time collecting them. So there's still a cost to getting those 70, pieces of materials to make the item. So I don't think it's going to destroy anything. It might chip into it some, but I think it's just going to open up other opportunities, especially with this quality thing. I think that's going to be a really interesting aspect. The other thing that jumped out at me was this item. It says an item that only you can get. So they mentioned this just in passing in the presentation. It was just kind of like a throwaway sentence. I don't exactly know what that means. Is this an item you can get like from a dungeon? Is it something you can get from other aspects of the game? Raiding, PvP, I don't know. Is that item going to take the place of some of the materials? Or is it a special item to increase the quality of it? How is that going to factor into the whole crafting aspect? Because then that's what's going to make a difference if I am just creating items. So as a crafter, do I have to have the special agent to make these items? But if so, I don't know. Like pure speculation, right? There's a million things it could be. We're gonna have to find out as time goes on here what it is, and we're gonna have to work around it. And hopefully we'll still be able to make tons and tons of gold doing it, whatever it is. I don't think they're gonna kill crafting. I think anybody who suggests that it's going to destroy any aspects of being able to make gold, it may not be exactly the same way you've made gold up to this point. There will be other ways. So what I think Blizzard is trying to do is open up kind of professions to maybe more casual players. Because what I can imagine is with these work orders, for instance, well, again, I don't think it's going to eliminate the auction house play that happens. What I could see is this open up. So I come and I say, okay, I have the materials and I'm offering a 200 gold tip and I place this out. Maybe a casual crafter, somebody who's not, playing the game the way I do, coming up and happen to come across and say, oh yeah, I can craft and make 100 gold, quick 100 gold. Yeah, that's 100 gold they took out of my pocket if I didn't see it in time and I wasn't there to do it. But if there's enough of them, it's not a big deal, Where the truth is right now, nobody's doing that with legendaries. There's not really casual players creating legendaries and just making a small profit. They're not going to make the money I make, but they're making something at least, right? It's not really happening with casual players right now. So we'll see. I think they have some good ideas. We'll see if they're implemented. Now, my overall take on the new expansion and all of this stuff, because I see a lot of people understandably saying things like, "Oh no, you can't trust Blizzard. They've said a lot of good things in the past, and then they give us garbage." And I get that. I do understand that. I don't think there's any problem, hoping that this is a good expansion. The stuff looks cool, right? I absolutely acknowledge that 2 months after the expansion comes out, we might be sitting here having a conversation talking about how, this expansion is hot garbage. That's absolutely a possibility. If I want to play it, I'll be honest, I've had fun at the beginning of every expansion. I had fun at the beginning of Shadowlands. As time wore on and we got stronger and the systems started being so oppressive, you couldn't do things like change covenants. I mean, that was a pain and that's bad. But still, new expansions just tend to be fun. Leveling up and getting into the flow of it at the beginning is fun. So this one will probably be fun, and then hopefully if things work out and they implement it well, it'll continue to be fun. That's all we can hope for, right? So that's what I think, guys. Hope I didn't ramble on too much for you there about the professions. I find it very interesting, and I'm looking forward to it. In the meantime, they didn't give any, dates or anything like that. It's going to be a while. They did announce Wrath is going to come out in 2022. That's pretty cool. I think I'll check that out. I hope to see you all there, and see y'all next time.